I still remember the very first time I laid eyes on him. He didn't just enter the room, he seemed to command it, as if the air itself shifted around him. My heart raced in ways I had never experienced before, and I felt an unexplainable pull, a magnetic force I couldn't resist. At that moment, I had no idea I was falling for a narcissist, someone whose charm would soon become a cage. But in that first instant, all I could see was perfection. He smiled at me like he already knew me, like he had peered straight into my soul and discovered every secret I had tried to hide. There was an intensity in his gaze that made me feel both vulnerable and invincible at the same time. When he spoke, every word seemed tailored just for me. I laughed at jokes that weren't even funny, mesmerized by the way he could make me feel like I was the only person in the world that mattered. I wanted to believe in him completely, and I did. The beginning was intoxicating. He listened to me, really listened, and for the first time, I felt seen. My feelings, my thoughts, my fears, my dreams, he seemed to understand them all. I didn't notice how carefully he had orchestrated every gesture, every word, every glance. That was the thing about a narcissist. The charm feels effortless, natural, sincere, and yet, beneath it all, there was a precision that I wouldn't recognize until much later, when the illusion had already taken root. I began giving him pieces of myself I had never shared with anyone. My deepest insecurities, my long-buried dreams, my fears of being unloved, I shared them freely. He held them gently, or so it seemed. At night, I would lie awake thinking about him, replaying our conversations, cherishing every word he had spoken. I couldn't get enough of him. I was utterly captivated, but there were subtle hints, faint shadows that I ignored because I didn't want to see them. A cold glance that lingered too long, a brief impatience when I spoke, a hint of dismissal hidden behind a smile. I rationalized it all. I told myself he was just stressed, tired, misunderstood. The narcissist never made his intentions obvious. He drew you in slowly, wrapping you in comfort and adoration, while tightening invisible chains around your heart. I can still remember the night I realized I was completely under his spell. We sat on his couch, the room dimly lit, music softly playing in the background. He looked at me with those piercing eyes and whispered, "You are different. No one has ever seen me the way you do." My chest tightened. I felt validated in ways I never had before. I wanted to believe him with every fiber of my being. That night, I didn't just fall in love, I surrendered. Looking back, I can see now that the narcissist had already begun mapping my mind, charting my emotions, planting seeds of dependency I wouldn't recognize until they had grown into entangling roots. I was intoxicated by his attention, enchanted by his charm, and completely blind to the subtle manipulation that was already beginning. Every smile, every compliment, every gentle touch was a calculated act, drawing me deeper, making me crave him even more. The beauty of the beginning is always deceptive. I felt alive, seen, cherished. I believed I had found someone who could love me entirely, unconditionally. I believed I had found my safe place. But beneath that warmth was a quiet, almost invisible storm, and I was walking straight into it without even realizing. The narcissist made me feel like I was chosen, like I was extraordinary, like no one else could ever compare. And in that intoxication, I lost my sense of self without even noticing. By the end of that first week, I was completely consumed by him. Thoughts of my life outside of him, my friends, my passions, my own voice, they all started to fade. I began measuring every action, every word, every decision against how it would affect him. I thought I was in love, but in reality, I was already trapped. And the worst part? I didn't even know it yet. That was the climax of the beginning. Not dramatic or violent, but insidious. I had fallen for a narcissist completely, surrendered my heart, and opened the door to a kind of destruction I could never have imagined. I felt alive and loved, but in truth, I was already walking into a cage, one built from charm, devotion, and subtle, almost invisible control. I was falling, deeper than I had ever fallen before, and there was no one to catch me. After that first intoxicating week, I found myself thinking about him constantly. Every moment, every decision, every thought somehow revolved around him. I didn't notice it then, but I was slipping further into the trap of the narcissist's carefully constructed world. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't violent. It was quiet, subtle, almost unnoticeable. And that's what made it so dangerous. He had a way of making me feel like I was the only person who truly mattered. "You're the one who understands me," he would say. And I believed it completely. I believed I had discovered a rare connection, something profound, something that no one else could ever replicate. In reality, the narcissist was training me, shaping me, making me dependent on his attention, his approval, his presence. I gave him more of myself than I had ever imagined possible. My time, my energy, my dreams, all surrendered willingly. He asked nothing overtly, but somehow I felt compelled to offer everything. It wasn't coercion, it was the illusion of love. Every act of kindness, every word of praise, every glance felt like a reward for my devotion. I craved that reward, and the narcissist knew exactly how to give it. Sparingly, strategically, keeping me constantly on edge, always wanting more. The first signs of manipulation were subtle, almost invisible. A careless comment that made me question myself. A moment of silence that left me anxious. The narcissist would never outright criticize, never confront directly, but I began to notice that I was second-guessing my every word, my every action, and each time I confronted him, he would turn it around so cleverly that I felt guilty for even questioning him. I started isolating myself from friends and family, not because he demanded it, not because he forbade it, but because I wanted him to be my center, my world, my reason for existence. The narcissist didn't force me. He created a space where I willingly abandoned everything else. My friends' calls went unanswered. Family gatherings felt irrelevant. My passions, hobbies, dreams, all slowly pushed aside. I was consumed entirely by him, and he was consuming me in return, not with love, but with control disguised as affection. I remember one particular evening, sitting on the couch as he casually dismissed my concerns. My heart raced with anxiety, trying to interpret his tone, his expression. "You're overreacting," he said softly. And just like that, I doubted myself. I replayed every word, every gesture, every thought, searching desperately for some validation. That's the narcissist's power. Not in aggression, but in quiet, systematic erosion of your confidence, your self-trust, your identity. There were moments of overwhelming affection, of course. Moments that made me believe everything was still real, still love, still worth it. He would smile, lean close, whisper my name, tell me how special I was. And in those moments, I forgot the small coldness, the doubt, the anxiety. The narcissist alternated cruelty and charm with surgical precision, keeping me tethered, keeping me dependent, keeping me constantly on edge, constantly yearning, constantly falling deeper. I began to notice how my own thoughts were no longer my own. I second-guessed every decision, every word. Did he like this? Was he angry? Did I say something wrong? I was trapped in a cycle of seeking approval from the very person who was eroding me. And yet, despite the anxiety, despite the confusion, despite the fear, I couldn't stop. The narcissist had become an addiction. It was at this point that I realized the depth of my surrender. I wasn't just in love. I had willingly handed over my entire sense of self. Every ounce of independence, every shred of self-esteem, every fragment of confidence, all gone. And the narcissist, ever so gently, began to tighten his hold. Not with threats or yelling, but with silence, with subtle judgment, with moments of absence that made me crave his return even more. The nights were the worst. Alone, I would replay every interaction, every smile, every word. Was I imagining the coldness? Was it me being too sensitive? But the narcissist's pattern was clear. Charm, withdrawal, subtle blame, affection. It kept me unbalanced, desperate, addicted to his presence, terrified of his absence. I didn't yet know that this was the beginning of the emotional destruction that would leave me shattered. By the end of this phase, I was completely lost. I was a shadow of myself, walking around in a carefully constructed illusion of love. The narcissist had created a reality where I existed only in relation to him, my thoughts, feelings, and identity shaped entirely by his presence, his approval, his manipulation. And the worst part? I still loved him. I still believed in the moments of tenderness, still clung to the hope that he could love me as fiercely as I loved him. That is the insidious climax of this stage, the total surrender. I had given everything, and yet I was unaware that the narcissist was slowly dismantling me from within. I was caught in a trap so meticulously designed that I didn't even realize I was falling, deeper and deeper, into the hands of someone who could never truly love me. And the terrifying truth is this: I was addicted to the very person who was destroying me. It took me a long time to realize the truth, that the man I had loved with every fiber of my being was a narcissist. The charming, attentive, intoxicating presence I had fallen for was not capable of real love. What he offered was a carefully curated illusion designed to keep me addicted, dependent, and doubting myself. And the longer I stayed, the more of myself I lost. For months, I questioned everything. My thoughts, my feelings, my reality, all seemed uncertain. I replayed every conversation, searching desperately for answers, trying to pinpoint when the man I adored became someone who drained me instead of lifting me up. I felt trapped, like I was living in a house with no doors, no windows, just walls built from his manipulations, his words, his carefully hidden disdain. The breaking point came one night when I finally saw through the smoke and mirrors. He said something small, almost casual, that hit me like a hammer. And suddenly, the truth was undeniable. The narcissist had never truly cared about me, never truly loved me. Every compliment, every moment of tenderness, every smile, it was all a tool, a calculated move to keep me under his control. I felt a cold rage, a bitter mix of grief and anger, and finally, clarity. I remember the first moments of true detachment. I sat alone in my room, trembling, tears streaming down my face. But inside, I felt something else, a spark of freedom. For the first time in months, I could breathe without anticipating his reaction. For the first time, I remembered who I was before him, before the narcissist had carved his path into my mind. I remembered my passions, my dreams, my voice. I remembered the person I had been, strong, vibrant, alive. Letting go wasn't instant. The narcissist had embedded himself into my identity so deeply that it took weeks, months, even years to peel away the layers of control and doubt. I had to relearn to trust my own judgment, to recognize manipulation, to forgive myself for the mistakes I made while under his spell. And slowly, painstakingly, I began to reclaim my life. I started small, calls to friends I had ignored, reconnecting with family, pursuing hobbies and passions that had once brought me joy. I reminded myself that love shouldn't hurt this much, that love shouldn't make you doubt your very existence. The narcissist had taught me fear, dependency, confusion, but I was learning courage, independence, clarity. The healing process was not linear. There were days when I cried uncontrollably, when memories of his charm and subtle control made me question my progress. But each day I grew stronger. I recognized patterns, learned to protect myself, and slowly the power he had over me began to fade. I realized that the narcissist could no longer define my worth, dictate my emotions, or shape my identity. That power belonged to me, and me alone. Now, when I think back to the person I was before him, I feel a mix of sorrow and pride. Sorrow for the innocence I lost, for the pain I endured, pride for the strength I discovered, the resilience I never knew I had, and the life I am rebuilding for myself. The narcissist tried to break me, to erase me, to make me doubt my own reality. But I survived. I endured, and I am reclaiming every piece of myself he tried to destroy. Falling for him was a beautiful nightmare, a lesson written in scars. The narcissist left wounds, yes, but he also inadvertently taught me my own strength. I learned how to love myself, how to set boundaries, how to recognize the difference between real love and manipulation. I learned that my worth is not dependent on someone else's approval, and that my heart, though bruised, is still capable of love. Healthy, genuine, reciprocal love. Today, I am free. Free from the narcissist, free from the fear, free from the doubt. I look back not with regret, but with understanding. The experience shaped me, forced me to confront myself, and ultimately helped me emerge stronger than I ever imagined. I survived the narcissist's manipulation, and I am reclaiming my life. One day, one breath, one victory at a time. The story doesn't end with destruction. It ends with survival, with empowerment, with the reclaiming of a self that no narcissist could ever destroy. And if you are watching this, if you are in the middle of loving someone who seems perfect but feels toxic, know this: you can survive, you can break free, and you can reclaim yourself too. Because the truth is simple. Falling for a narcissist may have destroyed parts of me, but it didn't destroy me entirely. I am still here. I am still me. And I will never let a narcissist define my story again.